Alright guys, so this is your lesson on seasons. Okay, so we've been talking about the sun and what it does for us here on Earth. We talked about eclipses, we talked about day and night, we talked about a year being Earth's revolution around the sun. So we've talked about some of the things that the sun does for us so far, and we're continuing talking about the sun. Alright, so we are going to talk specifically about why we have seasons today. Alright, so what I want you to do, just to kind of bring your brain back to what we've been talking about, I want you to answer this question in your notes. You can write it down, you can type it, something, but I do want you to put it down so you can look at it and see all the stuff that the sun does for us, okay? We've talked about it in different lessons, but I do want you to go ahead and dump everything that you can think of that the sun does for us. I want you to put that on a piece of paper or on a Google Doc or something like that. So I do want you to pause the video and take a second to do that. All right. All right. Now that you've had a chance to answer that question, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the stuff we talked about in class, and I'm going to add some stuff to it. Okay. So in elementary school, one of the first things you probably learned, this was probably in third or fourth grade, you talked about what the sun does for us here on Earth. We talked about how it gives us light and it gives us heat. It gives the plants food, and the plants feed the animals here on Earth. So without the sun, we wouldn't have life as we know it. We wouldn't have any warmth. We wouldn't have any light. We wouldn't have any plants to eat, and we wouldn't have any animals to eat. Okay. So without the sun, life is not possible for us. Okay. So those are some things that the sun does for us. And we talked about in this class this year, we talked about how we see eclipses. We talked about the solar storms, what that can do to Earth. We talked a little bit about the auroras. So we talked about the sun already just a little bit. We've talked about some of the things it does, and this is one of the big things that we experience because of the sun. We experience seasons. Okay. So really quickly, we're gonna refresh, talk a little bit about what we've already talked about. So again, day and night, Earth rotates on its axis once every 24 hours. And be careful with rotation. It sounds a lot like revolution, but revolution is different. So rotation is what causes day and night. The Earth spins on its axis. And then revolution is the Earth traveling around the sun. Okay, so the Earth revolves around the sun. That's what gives us years. Okay, so we've talked about this already. This is just kind of a refresher to get us back into the swing of things, talking about the sun and what it does for us. Okay, now one of the most important things we're talking about season is Earth's tilt. Okay, so Earth's axis is tilted 23.5 degrees, and the tilt does not change as the Earth revolves around the sun. And the tilt of Earth's axis is what makes us experience seasons. Okay, now if Earth was not tilted, we wouldn't have seasons. We would have the same type of weather all year long. Some days when it's in winter, we have rain or snow or ice, and some days it's perfectly clear. But the type of weather that we would experience would not change. Near the equator, they would have summer all year long, nothing would change, nothing at all. Move up a little bit closer to the North Pole or closer to the South Pole, move farther away from the equator in either direction, it would get colder and colder and colder until you got to the North Pole or the South Pole, and that would be very, very cold winter, snow, ice all year long. Nothing would change, okay? So when we talk about Earth's axis being tilted, it is what gives us seasons. Now, if Earth was tilted and we didn't orbit the sun, we still would not experience seasons. We would be perpetually stuck in whatever season we happen to be in at that time. Okay? So Earth's tilt on its axis and the orbit work together, and that's why we experience seasons. Now, the reason Earth's tilt is important is because it changes the amount of direct or indirect sunlight we get. Okay? So right now we are in January, and we are getting a lot of indirect sunlight from the sun, okay? So the northern hemisphere is tilted away from the sun right now. So we are not getting any direct sunlight. We are getting indirect sunlight, okay? And a lot of people think that if we are closer to the sun, we're getting more heat from the sun. But January 2nd, so 2 days ago, January 2nd, we were the closest we will ever be to the sun this year. Okay, so we were at what they call perihelion. So we are as close as we could get to the sun, and we are still in winter. So our distance from the sun does not control our seasons. It is the tilt of Earth's axis which changes the amount of direct and indirect sunlight we get. So this direct sunlight shines straight onto the Earth, and it causes us to experience warmer temperatures. And the indirect sunlight shines at a low angle to the Earth and gives us cooler temperatures. So this light is not shining directly onto the Earth. It is going at an angle, and it's a very low angle. It's a very small angle, so we're not getting as much direct sunlight, okay? So that energy from the sunlight is spread farther out. It's kind of like when you put butter on your toast, you put it in one spot and then you have to spread it out. When you spread it out, there's less butter in one spot. But if it was direct sunlight, there's more butter in that one spot, okay? So that direct sunlight means there's going to be more heat and more energy from that sunlight than if it was indirect. This means that there's going to be less energy, less heat that we're feeling here on Earth. And just to make it a little bit easier, I'm going to give you another way to visualize this. Okay? So in this picture, the northern hemisphere, so the top part of Earth, what we call the top part of Earth, the northern hemisphere, is getting direct sunlight. So these lines right here are almost right angles, so they're very close to it. But if you look down here at these lines, they're hitting at lower angles. So they're getting indirect sunlight. So they're getting less energy from the sunlight. So it's going to have cooler temperatures down here and warmer temperatures up here. Okay? So just to reiterate, the reason we have seasons is because Earth's axis is tilted. Okay? And I am going to have a second lesson for you talking about a diagram of the seasons and where the seasons go in Earth's orbit, and we'll talk about why we experience certain seasons at certain times, okay? So this is just your lesson on why we experience seasons. There is another video on the diagrams that I'm going to have you create with talking about seasons, okay? So this is not your only video lesson for this topic.